As the FBI and local law enforcement piece together what exactly happened, witnesses are speaking out, including our next guest, who captured this video and says he's lucky to be alive. Here to share his story is Alex Berth Mitchell. Alex, welcome to you. First off, tell us about that video, what was happening in that moment that you were taking it.
It was honestly kind of surreal. I took it because I felt like I didn't know what was going on. I knew that something currently was still going on. I knew that I had to get out and be okay. I also tried to figure out how to get down there and help because I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything, and the police wouldn't let us. And then looking back on it, it makes sense. It's a terrorist event, so it's an ongoing threat. What if I could be the threat? I get it, but it was just very stressful, hectic, and I also felt like I recorded that just for the world to know what's going on. This is crazy. I needed proof for my family to know that I was alive, and then I was also just wanted to know, like, this is insane. I didn't know what to do, honestly.
Incredible. Alex, I know that you have said you feel lucky to be alive, and I'm sure your family feels the same. And I know you're giving credit to the fact that you were wearing a wristband from one of the clubs. Why did that help you?
Yeah. Oh, I'd been to some of the clubs earlier throughout the night. We wanted to get out and we go walking, but I noticed my watch was telling me, you've been walking so long, you want to record a workout. And I was like, man, we're just walking, really doing nothing. And it's fun to be out in there, but we've already been to some of the clubs. Like, it's, go in there and enjoy it while we're out here. And just had a feeling to go back inside. So the wristband got us back in. There was a line outside. We could show the wristband, show ID again, get scanned through by the metal detectors, and you were fine to go in. So I got in and out of there. And if I would have waited maybe no more than a minute, I could have been out there hurt, injured, dead. I'm lucky to be alive. The wristbands let us get back in quickly and easily, but I just wanted to go back in and just didn't feel like being out on the street anymore. Maybe that saved me. And I also still feel guilty that I couldn't help or that other people didn't make it out. So on one hand, you're happy. The other hand, feel terrible inside.
Of course, you saw so much, and 15 lives are
Yes,
now
ma'am.
lost. And it was obvious tragedy for anyone who witnessed it, including yourself. I know this was your first time out for New Year's Eve, did you say?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Just I'm always working. I've been the one doing Uber, Lyft, or working at the hotel, just working on whatever job. Was making sure that I could support me and my family. And but people tell me I don't go out enough. I don't have enough fun, and been going through a rough time. So I wanted to go out and have some fun. And it's not how I expected the New Year's to go by any means. And I was having a great night. So yes, I'm grateful to be alive, but I wish that I could say the same for others. It's hard to see that. It's really hard to see that and know other people won't see their families again, or they won't see their loved ones. It's just terrible. It's devastating, honestly.
Is there anything before you go, Alex, that you wanted to add to what you've seen reported so far, having been an eyewitness of the scene there, what you want people to know about what you were able to see?
On the one hand, I don't want anyone to see it as like, oh, you can't come here and have fun. I mean, something like this happened in Germany just last week for Christmas. So it doesn't really matter where you can go, where you can have fun. I don't want people to think that you can't live your life and can't have fun. And someone told me, if we live life like that, then we're letting the terrorists win, We're feeding into the terror, like being scared to go out. That's their end game, is to create terror and panic and fear. So I want to live my life and be happy. So I'm not upset that I went out, but I'm upset that this kind of stuff happens. I just want everyone to know to love your loved ones, have a good time, and don't be scared to live your life. But at the same time, check on your loved ones and just hold them close, because you never know when can be your last day, and you just really don't know when today could be your last day.
We hear you, Alex. And your friend Jimmy, is he okay? I know he was the one who wanted you to go out that night.
Yeah, Jimmy and I are good. I'm glad Jimmy was there. I'm really glad Jimmy got me out of the house.
Mm,
And then it ended up being like, hey, Jimmy, let's go back inside. Like, I know you want to be out and about having a good time on the street, but
yeah.
been having a good time in the clubs and had this wristband we already paid for. Let's go back in. And that was a great decision. So I took care of me and my friend at that point, but I wish that there could be more lives saved. That's all I can
Yeah.
tell you. And um,
Yeah.
me and Jimmy are good.
Alex,
Thank
thank you
God.
very much for joining us, and our best to you
Yes,
and our
ma'am.
best to your family. And thank you for sharing your thoughts.
I appreciate you and have a good one as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry live from New Orleans. Governor, we want to get to the very latest, but as we just read those names, bringing home the realities of the tragedy that occurred just over 24 hours ago, take your governor hat off for me. How is this impacting you?
Yeah, look, taking my governor hat off and putting my father hat on, I can tell you it's a somber day here in the city and around Louisiana. I mean, we have parents that are going to have to, that are making funeral arrangements as we speak, that are waiting to have their loved ones released to them. And again, I mean, each of those is a reminder of the terrorism that exists and people and the evil out there that they want to afflict on America. And so, again, we continue to have an outpouring of prayer and support for those families. Again, as you walk through that list, a lot of those are Louisianians. I'm going to be going over to the crime scene again this morning and walking through it. Hoping to maybe reach out and talk to some of those parents as well and to make sure that they're getting the support that they need so that they can start to work on some closure. And but again, you know, it's prayers and support, and the only thing that'll get them through is our faith.
You know, Governor, we're praying for your state. I'm from the state of Texas, and so we're neighbors. Know Bourbon Street all too well. It's known as a happy place, and you can have a good time there. I want to get your thoughts on the investigation. There's a lot of back and forth about the state of emergency, but still having the game as well. We were told that there are co-conspirators that are out there based on the information that you're getting. Is there still a threat of people that helped this guy do this out there in Louisiana?
Look, I think one of the most important things is to make sure that each one of those victims did not die in vain. All of them had come to the city in order to enjoy the city, in order to enjoy some entertainment and ring in the new year. Y'all had a guest earlier who was an eyewitness who said the same thing, is that we can't live in fear. We need to be able to live our lives. And what we plan to do is ensure that as we remember those folks, that we put New Orleans back in a position where people can come and have a good time. We believe that the city, I'm convinced that the city is safe. Look, this can happen in any city. But we, you know, I issued an executive order, an emergency declaration. We've got 100 military police officers that are on the ground. Our sheriffs from around the state have sent additional resources. The FBI has been pouring resources into this city since yesterday. We're getting some more today as well. I'm hoping to give the media an update on that, hopefully mid-morning. We're hoping to have more information to be able to give to the media. We want transparency. We want the answers. I know that there are a lot of people out there that want the answers, why, what happened. And we're going to get to those, but we want to make sure that we don't impede the investigation as we move forward.
Governor, Sandra here. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We know there's obviously a lot happening right at this hour as far as the federal investigation on the ground there. But to your point, in your words, you're hunting the bad people down. There was a suggestion that there are more people involved, that this was somehow a coordinated effort. What can you tell us about that right now?
Yeah, you know, Sandra, as much as I'd like to be able to report that, the one thing we don't want to do is put out speculation or information that we have not been able to confirm. And that is what I think is important, because if we put something out and then it comes out to be not true or not completely accurate, then we're back inside of a pretty bad news cycle, right? And we're giving people, and especially those families out there, mixed emotions and mixed information. So what we want to do is make sure that the information we put out to y'all is completely accurate so that we can get to some closure. I can tell you this. We're going to ensure that everyone who is involved in this horrific act of terrorism is going to be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Governor,
I'm sorry, real quick, Governor, I hate to jump on you, but there's conflicting information. On one hand, you're telling the people that it is safe, but then you have co-conspirators that are out there. And then to layer on that of getting all the information, we just had your Attorney General, your Chief Law Enforcement Officer, that says she hasn't even been briefed about those people that they brought into custody. So if your Chief Law Enforcement Officer is not being briefed about the people that are out there, how can the people have confidence?
Well, look, I can tell you this. I am in the city right now. I'm going to attend the Sugar Bowl this afternoon. I will be around. We are going to be briefing the media, hopefully about mid-morning. I don't know about the comments that the Attorney General made. Again, that's part of why we try not to engage in speculation. I think that every one of the elected officials should use the information that they're getting directly from law enforcement, directly from the Louisiana State Police and the FBI, and not continue to feed on innuendos. I've been trying to be couched in the information that I report back to the media specifically because of that. What I can tell you is that we believe that based upon the information that we're getting from the federal government and my Louisiana State Police, that this city is as safe as it's been. Look, this can happen in any city. Look, we had an incident in Las Vegas on yesterday. But I can tell you this, there are a lot more resources and law enforcement officers in the city of New Orleans right now than they were 24 hours ago. Again, you know, at the end of the day, we need not let fear paralyze us. That's the problem in this country.
Right.
When we do that, the terrorists win.
I understand that point, and there is, Governor, two sides of that argument, the safety and security and, of course, the resilience in not letting the terrorists win. But, you know, you mentioned Las Vegas, just hours apart, a couple of time zones apart. The country started the year with terror attacks, and it frightened them. And so I'm asking you, are you getting real-time information in briefings from the federal investigators about whether or not there may be any connection between Las Vegas and what happened in your city?
Look, we're getting briefings. I'm getting briefings from the FBI almost on an hourly basis. And again, I'll tell you this, the only way to protect people from evil is to crush it. And believe you me, Inauguration Day can't come soon enough, because the one person that understands that is Donald Trump. I can tell you this too. His Homeland Security pick, Governor Kristi Noem, who I served with in Congress, understands that as well. And they're going to work with us to put policies in place that protect the American people and not the criminals that are out there.
Governor, I know you're heading to the Sugar Bowl tonight. Anything you can share with us about your plans and what security is going to look like?
Look, security is going to be tight. We have all the confidence that we're going to be able to put this game on. The Superdome is completely secure. Again, the FBI continues to pour resources into the state. We hope to update you all sometime today on exactly what those resources look like as best we can. Again, maybe not getting into the specifics, but giving y'all a 50,000-foot view of the amount of resources that have been poured into the city.
We are with you, and we support your efforts, and thank you for everything you're doing there. Our heart breaks for the people of your state and all those who were visiting at the time.
Thank you for your time, Governor.
Thanks, Governor.
Thank you.
All right.
Incoming National Security Advisor Mike Waltz joins us now. Mike, what have you learned about this horrific tragedy, this terrorist attack, and what do you think that needs to be done now as you prepare to come in a new administration to protect the nation from further attacks?
Well, thank you, Griff. And look, here's the bottom line. The terrorists around the world, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and their offshoots, didn't get the memo that the war on terror is over. They still hate us. They are plotting and planning to attack us. And we have to be on maximum guard. We have kept President Trump informed throughout the last 24, 48 hours. And look, two things. One, we've got to take a hard look at our defenses. First and foremost, close our border, where we've had over 300 people on the terrorist watch list traverse our border in the last years, number one. Number two, I'll remind everyone, just in the last year, we had 8 ISIS operatives rolled up, surveilling sites to hit in 3 different cities. A number of them from that cell are still unaccounted for, based out of Tajikistan. And then there's the defensive aspect of this, the law enforcement and intelligence, and then there's the offensive aspect. And taking a hard look at our strategy overseas, our posture, our basing for our special operators and our intelligence operatives to keep a lid on ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and others, whether it's Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and other places where they may be plotting and planning to hit us.
You know, Congressman, I want to put, if you could put your door kicker hat back on as a Green Beret. When I talk with people in the community, when I talk with law enforcement, they all tell me the same thing. We're focused on the wrong things. We're not focusing on the threats to this country right now. Are you hearing that as well? That they look at yesterday as a mission failure. We had Americans that died. And something needs to change immediately. I mean, it's great that we got the former president coming back in, but something could happen between that time.
You know, you're absolutely right, but I want to echo others in praising law enforcement that literally ran to the sound of gunfire, ran into a hail of bullets, and stayed engaged and took this son of a, just took him out. Right. And you're right. It was a failure. We need to look at whether we had intel indicators. We need to look at, how he was radicalized online. I'm particularly interested. We'll be looking to the National Counterterrorism Center. Was he externally planned, plotted, and directed from ISIS operatives overseas, or was this truly homegrown? If it was homegrown, then was there some type of imam, mosque, or other type of radicalization element that is not only radicalizing him, but others internally? But again, guys, I can't emphasize enough, close the border, secure our sovereignty, and that is completely unacceptable. The entire world knows that we have an open border. They intend to hit us, and they are pushing people into our interior to do just that. And they know that if we're looking internally at ourselves, we can't be defending ourselves abroad. So that entire counterterrorism strategy, particularly now that they have a caliphate again in Afghanistan, where ISIS and Al-Qaeda are brewing, we just have to do a complete day one relook.
Hey, Congressman Sandra here. So as this story moves forward and hour by hour, we anticipate that we will get more information about all of this. As the incoming national security advisor, what is it that you are going to be looking for as the feds start to give us more information?
Well, number one, that external plotting versus internal radicalization, how that happened. Number two, I find it an amazing coincidence, but I don't think it is a coincidence, that you had 2 attacks renting from the same site, both veterans, that you could have a more radicalized and broader cell. Don't forget, you also had an Afghan that was stopped from making election day attacks. So this is why getting President Trump's cabinet in is so important. We need Governor Noam at DHS. We need Kash Patel at FBI. We need Pete Hegseth at DOD. This is an across the government look. Marco Rubio at State, and of course, Ratcliffe at CIA and Gabbard, Tulsi Gabbard at DNI. That has to be in place day one, guys, because this is a moment in transition of vulnerability, and President Trump is going to project, because he is a leader of strength, the narrative that we project on day one will be just important, and that's having our people in place.
And lastly, Congressman, during this transition period, just 19 days to go, are you currently in contact and getting briefings from your counterpart, Jake Sullivan?
I have been in contact with Jake Sullivan, the current national security advisor, through the last 24 hours. They are trying to piece together information, but we're not waiting on what we're just getting from this White House. Everybody has their feelers out so that we keep President Trump as informed as possible. And I can tell you what, he is ready to go day one, 19 days to go.
Real quickly, because we have to go, Congressman. I'm not asking you to reveal classified information, but was there chatter about this guy?
Not that I've been briefed, not that we know of at this point. But again, we've got to look. The National Counterterrorism Center, that's one of the reasons they exist, and our intel community is fully engaged to see what was going on from abroad.
Congressman, appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Congressman.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the motivation at this point is unknown. We are, as I mentioned earlier, following investigative leads both domestically and internationally as well. And so that includes search warrants and witness interviews, collecting forensic information, and basically trying to compile the facts. And so there's investigative activity taking place literally around the globe, trying to determine what the potential nexus is. But at this time, at this particular moment in time, as the sheriff aptly said, we have to focus on what we know and what we don't know. We know we have a bombing, absolutely. And it's a bombing that certainly has factors that raise concern. It's not lost on us that it's in front of, of the Trump building, that it's a Tesla vehicle, but we don't have information at this point that definitively tells us or suggests it was because of this particular ideology or any of the reasoning behind it. That's the purpose of the investigation that we're conducting, is to get to the bottom of exactly what happened, why and how. Sir.
Tim Caputo with KBC in Los Angeles. You mentioned a number of similarities between this case and the one in New Orleans. How far in the investigation process do you guys go to try to rule out that they are connected, knowing that you already have a couple of things that seem to connect them together?
So the question is how are we working to rule in or rule out any connections to the New Orleans event? And the answer to that is every tip and lead that comes in, every piece of evidence that comes in, we don't discount it, we work it through. It's an interesting thing during these kinds of investigations that if these turn out to be simply similarities, very strange similarities to have. And so we're not prepared to rule in or rule out anything at this point. There's lots more for us to do in this investigation. We haven't even gotten into the phones or the computers, which are usually very, very instructive and informative to us as we investigate. And we've got a lot more work to do to trace him, to see the stores that he went to rule out anybody else. Lots and lots of investigative work to do. And we're just trying to give you an update on what we know now. That is factual.
Let's bring in Tom Homan now, the incoming Trump administration border czar. Tom, great to have you here. And I want to get to New Orleans again in just a second, but we just got this fresh information out of Las Vegas, and the police chief there giving us a lot of new details. I want to get your reaction too. He characterized what they're learning on the ground there in Las Vegas as a suicide with a bombing that occurred immediately thereafter. They're not aware of any other subjects involved in that case. While they are aware of the similarities to the person who carried out the attack in New Orleans, they are not able to directly tie these two events together. They have no evidence that they are tied together, but they do not believe any further threat from that particular incident is out there at this time. What was your reaction to what you heard?
Well, look, I think the further the investigation goes, I think they are going to find a connection between the two incidents. But look, they're both suicide events. The man in New Orleans certainly had no plans of going home for getting out and trading gunfire with law enforcement. So I think both these men realized they weren't going home after this event. But the threats aren't over. I've been on this network for 4 years talking about the threats coming across our southern border. And, we got a record number of known gotaways. Over 2 million people enter this country. We don't know who they are or where they came from or what their purpose to come to this country. They weren't vetted, they weren't screened, they weren't fingerprinted. We don't know who they are. And since the Border Patrol and CBP arrested well over 300 people on terrorist watch list, how many of that 2.2 million who escaped apprehension, who escaped vetting, who escaped fingerprinting, came from a country sponsoring terror? Even Christopher Wray, the director of FBI, said numerous times under testimony in front of Congress that this is the biggest national security vulnerability he's seen. I agree with him. So we're not out of the woods. This country's in grave danger. We need to secure that border. And despite what's happened the last 2 days in Las Vegas and in New Orleans, this administration is not stopping. They're still releasing thousands of people every week through the CBP One app, the CHMV program, and Border Patrol continues to release people in this country without proper vetting. This is not a good thing, and I can't wait for the new administration to take power and secure this border and protect our national security.
Well, the police chief was asked about the incident in Las Vegas, if they had seen any motivation and inspiration from any terror group. They had not identified anything there yet, I should say, at least. They said they're very heavily still in the middle of that investigation. But to the point in New Orleans and the FBI update that we all just got a short time ago, the FBI confirmed that the suspect in New Orleans posted videos online Tuesday night claiming that he had joined ISIS before the summer and provided a will and testament. So they did confirm that he was indeed inspired by that terror group to carry out that vicious, violent, heinous act and attack there in New Orleans.
Well, that brings another issue. I think the incoming administration needs to look at insider threat. I mean, insider threat analysis has been put in the back seat by this administration. If we got 2 people who served in the military that were that committed these terrorist acts. We need to really dig down into insider threat in our military, in our federal service, whether it's the FBI, whether it's other agencies, whether it's the military. Insider threat's a big issue, especially in our industry that has infrastructure responsibilities. We need to drill down and find out about this inspiration and what insider threat is currently in the United States government, military, and in the United States government service, and address them right away. We got to address insider threat. We have to. We can't let this go on any further.
Tom, just to circle back there, you said earlier, and you just referenced again a terrorist connection there in Las Vegas. The police chief said they haven't identified that, but to your point, you said you believed as this investigation carries out in Las Vegas that I believe you just said you believe they will find a connection. Do you have any other information, or have you been privy to any other information other than what we just directly heard from the police there in Las Vegas? No,
I don't. This is a gut feeling. I've done this for 3.5 decades. I just think there's too many similarities, too much coincidence. I think something down the road they're going to show there's some sort of connection, whether it's they got whether it's some same network or where they got the tools to pull these terrorist attacks off. I just feel like there's going to be something down the road, and I could be wrong. It's just a gut feeling I have. Got it. Well, we know that they're going to keep us posted as that investigation continues. And Tom, we appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Let's bring in Nathan Sales, former ambassador at large and coordinator for counterterrorism under President Trump. Ambassador, thank you for being here. What do we need to hear in your mind from President Biden today? We're awaiting his remarks. Of course, it's on the topic of judicial confirmations, but we're going to monitor that to see if he says anything about this terror attack on the homeland. What do you think he needs to say today?
Well, Jackie, thanks for having me on. I think what we need to hear from the president is that fighting terrorism is still a priority. Look, we all want to turn the page and move on from the post-9/11 era where we're focused on al-Qaeda and ISIS and other terrorist groups. But unfortunately, terrorist groups are not prepared to turn the page on us. This is still a very real threat. What happened in New Orleans yesterday is a wake-up call that ISIS is still a very significant threat to the United States, to Europe, to our partners around the world. Ever since the caliphate fell in Syria and Iraq under the Trump administration, what we've seen is ISIS working to reconstitute itself, rebuild its networks. And so they're very active in places like Afghanistan, Pakistan. We've seen attacks in Russia, Iran, and now, tragically, an ISIS-linked attack here in the homeland. So what we need to hear from the president is a plan for are applying pressure to this group globally so that it can't hurt us here at home.
The FBI says right now that there's no link yet between the suspect in the New Orleans attack and the Las Vegas blast. But do you, in your experience, see anything that could indicate that they were in fact linked?
Well, I think that's something that investigators need to take a very hard look at. We've seen reports about a couple of possible coincidences. They both rented their vehicles from the same app. They served in the Army, apparently overlapping at least one location. No indications that they actually knew each other yet. But certainly when you have an electric truck being used to commit a terrorist attack in New Orleans and another electric truck being used to blow up outside the Trump Hotel, that bears a closer look. So we don't want to get ahead of the investigators at this point. We don't want to jump to conclusions. A lot of things we think we know in the early stages of an investigation like this turn out not to be true. So let's take a deep breath, let the investigation run its course, and see what they come up with.
And this is, of course, also happening at a tenuous time in our country as we head into a transition between two administrations. So all the more important to dot our I's and cross our T's. Nathan Sales, thank you. Appreciate your time. President Biden speaking at the White House in the wake of the New Orleans terror attack and the Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. Let's listen in.
Investigations into yesterday's terrorist attacks in New Orleans and the truck explosion in Las Vegas. I've just come from the meeting, not just to spend, while we prepare these remarks, better part of an hour from my Homeland Security team. The number of people killed in New Orleans has risen to 15, including the attacker. 35 people were injured. Today, the FBI briefed me that as of now, we have no information that anyone else is involved in the attack. They've established that the attacker was the same person who planted the explosives in those ice coolers in two nearby locations in the French Quarter just a few hours before he rammed into the crowd with his vehicle. They assess he had a remote detonator in his vehicle to set off those two ice chests. So there's no question that, remember all the talk about other people were involved, placed in, they have him, they have established he's there, and even established that he had a detonator to explode those ice chests. As I said yesterday, the attacker posted several videos just several hours before the attack, indicating his strong support for ISIS. Federal law enforcement and the intelligence community are actively investigating any foreign or domestic contacts and connections that could possibly be relevant to the attack. And so we're also continuing to investigate whether or not there's any connection between the New Orleans attack and the explosion in Las Vegas. As of now, they've just been briefed. They have not found any evidence of such a connection thus far. I've directed them to keep looking. The individual who rented the truck that exploded in Las Vegas also served as active duty U.S. Army. And the FBI is working with the Department of Defense on investigating, including the service members' possible motives and all those he worked with, who served with him, with things he'd say and do. I directed my team to accelerate these investigations so we have answers to our unanswered questions. They're making every single resource available to get the job done. And we're going to share the facts as soon as I learn them so the American public doesn't have to wonder. In the meantime, like I said last night, New Orleans is a city of tremendous spirit. You can't keep it down. You really can't. And we're seeing that today. The Sugar Bowl is back on. Kickoff is going to take off very shortly. If I don't get this damn thing done, we're going to be in real trouble. And the FBI has handed control of Bourbon Street back to local officials. Security of the area has been reinforced, and they should be open for business later today, the Bourbon Street. People in New Orleans are sending an unmistakable message. They will not let this attack or the attackers' deluded ideology overcome us. None of us should fear that it will overcome us. We're going to continue to relentlessly pursue ISIS and other terrorist organizations where they are, and they'll find no safe harbor here. I'll continue to provide updates in New Orleans and Las Vegas as the facts develop. Now to the business at hand. I can't tell you how much I appreciate these two men.
Let's bring in Jimmy Cothran, who also witnessed that attack. Jimmy, just, person to person, obviously you're here with us, but are you okay?
in the passing days, the hardest part has been there's names and faces with these victims now. These innocent people full of life just gone. And Miss Perez was the first body I seen. And I mean, it broke me when they showed that picture of her and her son, because that wasn't the woman I seen when I looked down and walked out. Just the pain and everything she probably went through in those last moments. And then being by herself there in the middle of the road. And then the Nakira, she was the one to the left, a little further down from Miss Perez. A very small girl. She was the one I seen dancing earlier, having a good time. She didn't look like a human. And it's getting a little rougher, but I think this is important for the awareness of just the whole reason that y'all even got my name was my outrage when we left of them not activating those barriers. Someone that goes down there frequently and seeing what they can do. I'm in construction. I know how that works. And all they're showing y'all are the concrete barricades that they're saying weren't there, couldn't be fixed. But the hydraulic that goes all the way across the street from pole to pole, like I described ABC, those were there. There was no construction going on with the hydraulic barriers. And they're completely infallible. Like that truck is not getting over them, through them, nothing. He would have never got that speed. Just so much could have been better.
We do know from authorities that some of those barriers that were being replaced as part of a larger infrastructure project for the Super Bowl were not working properly, and that they're getting those back up and working right now. But just in less than a minute that we have left in this show, what is your message to the community that's recovering from the tragedy that you witnessed?
Here today, my message is a little different just because loss. People take so much for granted as far as how we treat each other. Mm-hmm. When you have things this heinous and this evil, you can't let the small things dictate a minute of your life. Yeah. When that life might not be there tomorrow or later this evening. And I would like to also bring a lot of attention to these people's GoFundMes. We keep talking about this criminal, this man.
We're out of time, sir. Jimmy Cothran, important final message. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My next guest says the way New Orleans handles special events is going to drastically change. Louisiana parole and probation officer David Dean joins us now. Thank you, sir, very much for joining us. How will things change? What are you telling us?
Well, the way it's going to change, good to be with you. It's going to be more law enforcement officers in the French Quarter, more law enforcement officers in the city of New Orleans, from surrounding state agencies, probation and parole, Louisiana State Police, Troop NOLA, Wildlife and Fisheries, the fire marshals. All those agencies have been sent to the New Orleans area, specifically around the French Quarter, by Governor Landry. And that's to ensure public safety. And that's, I believe, is going to be the norm moving forward for special events. So we can try to prevent things like this from happening again.
Would more law enforcement on the ground, more bodies, would that have prevented this? This was a truck that rammed into, and the driver that rammed itself into a crowd.
Well, you got to look at the totality of everything. The barriers that were not operational at the time obviously played a factor into the vehicle getting on Bourbon Street and making it all the way to the 300 block. So it's not just officers on the ground doing the job, but it's also having every piece of resource that law enforcement needs. The barriers, intelligence, make sure we follow up on on any kind of intelligence that's coming through the wire, any threats to the city during those events. It's a totality of everything. You have to take everything, combine it together, formulate a plan, and execute it.
I mean, you consider a place like New Orleans busy almost every night of the year. Earlier, I was pointing out to my team when we were showing a live shot of Bourbon Street in St. Peter before they had reopened the street, just silent, not a person to be seen. I said, there's one night a year that, for many of us who know that city, is one night a year you see that. And it's at midnight after Mardi Gras. And it is a moment to witness that. I mean, to think that this is a city that deals with thousands and thousands of tourists every day. Can you pull together the resources to protect a city like that, knowing these threats are out there every single day?
I believe we can. I believe with the leadership of the governor and all the state agencies, the New Orleans Police Department, our federal partners, I think we can do it. And I think we've proven it over and over again. Yes, we did have a terrorist attack, and it was horrific, and it'll go down in history in one of the worst terrorist attacks in New Orleans. But we have hosted events like this for a long time, and we do have crime in the city, and I believe the New Orleans Police Department is taking care of that. Crime, is supposed to be down, and that's good. Yeah. All the agencies are taking part on that: state police, probation and parole. But the way we execute the plan is paramount, and I believe that with the leadership of our administration, I think it can be done. New Orleans Police Department is great in handling crowds, and it always has been. Mardi Gras every year, and this is an unfortunate event that happened, but I believe that we can get it done, and with our leadership and all our federal partners, state and the city partners, I think it can be done. Absolutely.
Well, indeed, we're hoping for a very safe game today and a safe return for New Orleans. People there have been through a lot. It's scared a lot of folks, and we have been assured by the governor and other officials that they have secured that city. They have secured that Superdome, and it's been a huge effort and a huge collaboration, and we hope that they can get back to their way of life. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. We do appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And again, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and in the city of New Orleans. Very dear city to me. I've worked there for 24 years, and God bless the city of New Orleans and this great country.
It's a special place, that is for sure, and special people. Thank you very much. On the Hill for us with the very latest from there. Hi, Aisha.
Hi there, Sandra. Well, lawmakers are telling me their biggest frustration after getting some more information today from the FBI is how did they miss this entire thing? They found out the FBI wasn't tracking this guy, that they didn't have really any intelligence on him until the attack happened. They also learned that he was inspired by ISIS, not necessarily directed by ISIS. So here is what we know about this man so far from the FBI. He claimed to have joined ISIS before this summer. He posted about 5 videos on Facebook supporting ISIS the night of the attack, and he had that ISIS flag on his truck. We all know that now. I'm told the FBI is questioning a Houston mosque, trying to learn some more information about him, but some lawmakers are pretty angry that the FBI knew nothing about him until it was too late.
It was a failure. We need to look at whether we had intel indicators. We need to look at how he was radicalized online.
The FBI was more interested in tracking down people that protested the election on January 6, 2021. They raided Mar-a-Lago, went after pro-life protesters, parents holding their school boards accountable. That's a misallocation of resources based on the leadership of this administration.
So the other thing that's been raising a lot of eyebrows here is this incident in Las Vegas. Some lawmakers have told me that they find it very hard to believe that these two are not connected. The Trump Tower explosion on the same day as that New Orleans attack. Senator Josh Hawley is now calling on the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who you will talk to in a few moments here, calling on him to come to the Hill to testify, as well as FBI Director Christopher Wray. He says it needs to happen quickly, immediately. Back to you, Sandra.
Joining me now, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Secretary Pompeo, an honor to have you here. You're the perfect guest to speak to this. I want to pull up a list of ISIS-inspired attacks to put into perspective just how big of an attack this was. And as you can see at the top was Pulse nightclub. That was the deadliest ISIS attack. It left 49 dead. Then you go to New Orleans, which is tied with San Bernardino at 14 dead. We know at its height, ISIS was controlling a territory the size of Britain, about a third of Syria, about 40% of Iraq, and then you came in with President Trump, and ISIS was decimated. What do you assess and estimate the strength of ISIS is today after 4 years of this President Biden?
Okay, good evening. Sadly, we're right back in the soup again, precisely where we were in January 2017, just as you referred to, with ISIS roaming free, cutting the heads off civilians on the beaches. We all remember those videos. And the acts in New Orleans remind us all this evil still roams. And when America fails to lead, when you don't engage in solid law enforcement and enforcing criminal laws, when you can't secure your borders, when you refuse to call out radical Islamic terrorism and punish it, you get the events of October 7th. You get the events of just this past week in New Orleans. You get a resurgence of ISIS. You get Al-Qaeda back growing again after what happened in Afghanistan. This is a set of failed policies that lead directly to increased risks all across America, in our cities and all across this country.
I was reviewing some of your speeches today, and I was really intrigued by an anecdote that I came across. It was from a speech you gave in 2019, and I want to pull this up and have you retell it for our viewers. As we all think about January 20th, President Trump coming back in, something happened on his inauguration day in 2016. He went out to the Central Intelligence Agency headquarters, you said, the very first day, less than 24 hours after he was inaugurated, and he pledged his support for whatever the agency needed to take out Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and the entire caliphate. So day one, President Trump came to the CIA and said, let's get ISIS?
He inaugurated at noon on a Friday, and 10 o'clock the next morning, he was out at Langley, speaking directly to the officers at the agency and telling them, you have the resources you need. Let Director Pompeo know, and I'll make sure you have them, and we're going to go crush these bad guys. And we saw that, whether it was the strike we took against Qasem Soleimani to push back against the Iranians, or to your point about Baghdadi, we were serious about making clear that there would be real costs for those who committed terror against the American people or risked our lives. And that morning, that Saturday morning, set the course, frankly, for the entire 4 years, where we were directed by him and then given the power and the freedom to go execute a series of plans that delivered the very security that we lack today. What we saw as a result just these last 48 hours, I feel so badly for these families who lost their loved ones.
I do too. And I hope that that anecdote takes place again in just a few days. It's really intriguing to hear that. You know, do you fear that ISIS is in the country now? Because when we look, there was that attack in Moscow that left 137 dead. They had planned an election day attack. There were individuals from Tajikistan connected to ISIS, 8 of which entered our country. Do you think ISIS is walking among us?
Kayla, you need only listen to what Director Wray said at the FBI a few weeks back, right? He said, all the lights are flashing. I fear precisely what we saw play out. We've also seen a couple of hundred folks that are on the terror watch list come across our southern border. We don't have any earthly idea where many of these folks are. Yes, I fear not only are there folks who are members of ISIS or inspired by ISIS, as we saw, but there are planners, there are plans, there are people who might well be activated. This is the task that President Trump and his team will face. They need to go find them all, take down these networks, do the solid intelligence collection, right? This is hard work, collecting chatter from abroad and things that are taking place inside the country. It is granular grunt work that's got to be done and executed by the federal officials, by local and state sheriffs and police forces, but it needs to be led by the United States of America from the top. And sadly, this administration has failed to do that in ways that I fear will come back to continue to haunt us for months and months and months, Kaylee.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, thank you as always. Well, let's bring in former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. It's an honor to speak with you, Ambassador O'Brien. You served as National Security Advisor when I was working in the Trump White House as press secretary. You did an excellent job. And I want our viewers to hear from you directly, because as National Security Advisor, you advised the president to the panoply of national security threats we face and the options before him. And as you look at ISIS, 1,500 to 3,000 strong in Syria, we believe, so they are somewhat decimated in number. Do you fear ISIS today has regrown? Is this a threat that you think Jake Sullivan is looking at as he lays out the options for President Biden?
Well, Kayleigh, it's great to be with you, and thank you for those kind words. Keep in mind, the Obama-Biden people called ISIS the JV team back before President Trump came to office. And that JV team killed many Americans, including Kayla Mueller and James Foley and Peter Sotloff and others. So, this is a very dangerous group of people. And we've had a wide open border for 4 years, Kayleigh. We've had not just the terrorists on the watch list that we've caught, the thousands and hundreds of thousands of gotaways. So we've got ISIS. We know for a fact we've got Hezbollah here. We've got Chinese soldiers here. We've got, you name it, the bad guy central is here in America. And Kash Patel and Stephen Miller and the folks who are in charge of Homeland Security are going to have their hands full when they get into office, because it's time that the FBI stop going after Catholic people going to Latin Mass and PTA parents going to PTA meetings and anti-abortion protesters and January 6th guys. And they've got to go round up all these ISIS terrorists, the Hezbollah terrorists, the Chinese agents, and that's going to be a lot of work, Kayleigh.
It is. And Ambassador O'Brien, we know that Assad was a horrific dictator, killed many, and he's no longer in Syria. Now you have the rebels that have taken over. But when I read this in the Washington Post today, I wanted to pull it up for you. You see that ISIS actually has 9,000 individuals in Syrian prisons. So as you look at ISIS in Syria and this new regime of rebels, does it concern you that we don't know what's going to happen to these 9,000 individuals?
So this is something that concerned President Trump very much in the first term, and they're being held by our Kurdish allies in northern Syria. If they get released, they're going to go into the bloodstream of Syria, of Iraq, but they're also going to get here to America. And so we've got to make sure we do everything we can, Kayleigh, to support our Syrian Kurdish allies and make sure those ISIS guys stay in jail. And we've got to make sure this new regime and we hope they're moderate. They claim they've given up their jihadi past. We've got to make sure they keep these ISIS folks in jail, because if those 9,000 terrorists get released, they're going to wreak havoc all over the Middle East, but even here in the homeland.
You wrote an excellent article in Foreign Affairs, and it really kind of sums up the Trump doctrine. People say, we don't have a few words to sum it up. It's peace through strength. But this really, in long form, sums it up. And I want to pull up the headline, The Return of Peace Through Strength. President Trump, along with you, Pompeo, others, did it once. How does President Trump do this again as he stares down China, who says it's time to reunify with Taiwan?
Well, number one is rebuilding the military and making sure the rules of engagement for our warfighters allow them to defend us. And it's putting in a great team, which President Trump has done with Radcliffe and Elise Stefanik and Marco Rubio and Hagstedt. We're going to have a strong team that's going to come in with a total commitment by President Trump to leading from the front, not leading from behind. January 20th,
Ambassador O'Brien, thank you very much for joining me. Yeah, cannot come fast enough. Agree with you there.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.